probably tried the deep breathing, the cold plunge, infrared saunas, gluten-free diet, histamine-free diet, all these different types of things to help regulate your central nervous system. And you keep finding one central theme, and that none of it is working. And it's not that none of these things are ineffective by any means, but what it simply means is that the nervous system advice that you've been given is failing you. And throughout this video, well, my whole goal is to be able to show you the 3 things that are silently ruining your nervous system and why most nervous system advice actually fails you. If you're new to the channel, my name is Dr. Cameron Daniels. I'm a nervous system regulation specialist here in Little Rock, Arkansas, where I use the means of upper cervical chiropractic care to restore neurological integrity inside of the human body to get people to flourish and function at their best. So when it comes to nervous system regulation, what we often find in the nervous system regulation community is that most of the people, if not all of the people, and quote me on this, that are giving this nervous system regulation advice specialize in this reality called somatic therapy. And what somatic therapy is essentially realizing the different traumas that are inside of our bodies to be able to help release them and help regulate our central nervous systems. This really came from a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. And what this book talks about is it shows how our body is a physical reality of the stuff that we experience as we navigate not just childhood, but adolescence and into adulthood as well. But when we look at this book, The Body Keeps the Score, where it often fails is it only talks about one piece of the equation. And where nervous system regulation experts fail is that they only focus again on this one piece of the equation. And what I find in clinical practice is that it's not just emotional trauma that helps dysregulate someone's nervous system, although it is a big part of it. The reality is that the nervous system is comprised of 3 different things that it has to filter through. And I'll get through that in a second. The second issue that I have with nervous system regulation specialists is that they're not in clinical practice. I'm literally sitting inside of a spare room inside of the clinic that I practice in. And I have patients on the schedule today. At the time I'm recording this video, it's about 7 o'clock in the morning. And I have patients coming in here at 8 o'clock that I will see throughout this day. I have clinical patients that I take care of. I have real nervous system cases that I take care of. And this is not a certification. This is an actual degree with postdoctorate training that I specialize in, which is why I decided to start making content, because I want to be able to give people a fighting chance at their nervous system where generic nervous system advice actually fails. And I never want to guess, I want to measure. And I'll get to that in a second as well. So what are the 3 different things that cause the nervous system to dysregulate? It's called thoughts, traumas, and toxins. What does this mean? Thoughts. This is where we see emotional trauma, okay? Emotional trauma or emotional stress. And then we have thoughts, emotional stress. We have traumas, which is physical stress. Most people think when they hear the word trauma, they think of emotional trauma, which is a piece of it. But the trauma that I'm talking about here is simply physical stress on the body, okay? And then lastly, we have toxins, which is chemical stress. And what happens is that this emotional stress, this physical stress, and this chemical stress, our body has to fight through every single day. Emotional stress, if you're married, this is a natural consequence of marriage, is there's some form of emotional stress. Work is some form of emotional stress. And it's not that all stress is bad stress, which I will talk about in a later video, but that it's simply our body has to know how to regulate the stress. Importantly, knowing what's the bad stress and knowing what's called the good stress or the eustress. Okay. Emotional stress, again, this will be work, this could be family, and then we have physical stress. This is gravity, which is why posture affects us. Okay. This could be getting in a car accident is a physical stress. Riding a horseback is a physical stress, and many, many more different examples. And then lastly, we have chemical stress. This is what's in our food. This is what's in our water. This is what's in the air. This is what's in our home. If we're using Glade plugins or if we're using essential oils and all these different types of things, that can be a neurotoxin on the central nervous system. And the body has to regulate these 3: emotional stress, physical stress, and chemical stress every single day. And what happens is there's typically one event, either an emotional event, a physical event, or a chemical event that tips it over the edge and starts causing dysregulation in the body, and then starts proceeding with symptoms, anxiety, depression, POTS, dysautonomia, migraines, dizziness, vertigo, all these different things where doctors say we don't have any idea where it's coming from. And it's not because they're ignorant. It's because they're testing the wrong things. They're looking at it through the lens of their specialty, which is not in nervous system regulation. They're looking at it through the lens of cardiology or neurology or pulmonology. They're looking at it through their specific lens, when the reality is all of these different conditions are connected via one thing, and that's the central nervous system. So when the body goes through emotional stress, physical stress, and chemical stress every single day, what happens is even the smallest stressors, a little bit of argument at work, a little bit of work stress, a little bit of physical stress, right? Trying to go for a walk, a little bit of chemical stress, simply just trying to eat out at a restaurant. We see that in a dysregulated nervous system, these three different things, just small stressors, can influence the system enough to cause massive symptoms inside of the body because of its dysregulated state. So what the entire goal of the nervous system is to increase your body's resiliency to stress and decrease the body's stress load. That way, as we go through these three different stressors every single day, the body's able to regulate it more importantly. You know, there's two different types of nervous systems that we find, and it's called hyperactive nervous systems or hypoactive nervous systems. These are the two forms of dysregulation that the body can have. And of course, the one that we all want is regulated. And so what I created is I created a quiz for you to be able to see what type of nervous system are you. And keep in mind that this is not just any generic quiz. This is a very specific quiz pulling from 82 different research studies that look at hyperactivity and hypoactivity and the symptoms that are associated with it. Go ahead and click the link in the description and go ahead and take the quiz and find out what nervous system you are. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is in the state of hyperactivity and hypoactivity. What we want to do is, again, we want to be able to have a regulated nervous system. So the question is, how do we do that? This is where I talked about at the beginning of the video. You tried the cold plunges and deep breathings and all these different things, and they have not been working for your dysregulated nervous system. And the reason why is because this is generic nervous system advice. This is not your nervous system advice. With these two different types of nervous systems, hyperactive nervous systems and hypoactive nervous systems, think of hyperactive as high functioning nervous system. There's a lot going on and we want to calm it down. Think of hyperactive, it's low functioning nervous system, and we want to be able to bring the activity in the nervous system up. When we bring hyperactive down and hypoactive up, what happens is we are now in a regulated state. And the reality is we can have both of these different types of presentations inside of one person. Very, very common. But we always have one dominant one, either a hyperactive or a hypoactive, and they can fluctuate. That's why taking that quiz is so important. Then, after you identify what type of nervous system you have, hyperactive nervous system or hypoactive nervous system, and this is the key, we want to make sure that we are actually doing the things necessary for that type of nervous system. This is why most advice has failed you. So if you have a hyperactive dominant nervous system in this current season of life, different stress, right, that could be causing it. If we're doing high intensity interval training with a hyperactive nervous system, this would be CrossFit, this would be a sprint type activity as a physical stress. If we are not engaging in healthy social relationships, this is emotional stress. And if we are bombarding our system with a bunch of neurotoxic stimulus, that's the chemical stress. What's happening is all of this is just going to stay elevated. So you look at sprinting, we look at high intensity interval training. Okay? This is not going to be beneficial. We look at certain breathing. So very, very slow rhythmic breathing is not good for a hyperactive nervous system because they cannot focus on it. Their brain's running on haywire. And so trying to do this stuff's not going to work. So if we already have a hyperactive nervous system and we're doing stuff to help increase activity inside of the central nervous system, that's why it can even make the symptoms stay the same or actually get worse. On the contrary, if we have a hypoactive nervous system and we are doing cold plunge, all right, what this is going to do is this is going to continue to drive a hypoactive nervous system lower and lower into its threshold, creating the gap between regulated and hypoactive much farther apart. This is why symptoms or the person in the dysregulated state will either stay the same or get worse. So we have to identify what type of nervous system we have, hyperactive and hypoactive, and then we have to do very specific activities for that nervous system to be able to help bring it back to a regulated state, depending on what dominant you are in this current season of life, okay? Right now, you might be hyperactive. In 6 months, You may retake the quiz or find that you are in a hypoactive dominant state because hyperactivity is starting to go lower. The caveat with all of this is one thing. You have to do what's best for your central nervous system. In very generic nervous system advice, while we have universal principles that are very, very beneficial, we have to make sure that for these type of things, cold plunge, infrared, breathing, reading, nonfiction versus fiction, all these different types of things that are beneficial for certain types of nervous systems are not actually beneficial for the general public, but very specific towards the nervous system type. If this video interests you, I actually created an entire online community called the Nervous System Blueprint. You can go ahead and find that link in the description. And this Nervous System Blueprint is going to A, help you identify what type of nervous system you have, and B, give you the blueprint, the tools necessary to be able to work through either your hypoactivity or your hyperactivity to get you back to a regulated state. We have live calls every single week where I hop on and answer your questions from an actual practicing clinician. And then lastly, I continue to update this as we go. So how can we eliminate mold exposure in our house? How can we help increase good physical stress? How can we increase good emotional stress? All these different things are consistently being updated inside of this group. So go ahead and check the link in the description to get signed up for my school community for the Nervous System Blueprint. And let's go ahead and get regulated nervous systems together. Because if we have a regulated nervous system, then we can have a regulated life. And if we have a regulated life, we can then teach others to have a regulated life. We can get one step closer to achieving a regulated world.